I'm not ashamed to own my Lord, nor to defend his cause. Maintain the honors of his word, the glory of his cross.
Hello, I'm James Brown, and on behalf of the Eastern Church of Christ located in Toronto, Canada, I'd like to welcome you to today's edition of Walking Through the Bible, a podcast where we seek to study the Bible and the Bible alone. Please stick around afterwards for information on how you can contact us. But for now, please go to the book of Matthew, and we'll turn you over to Jeremy Dieselkamp for our study of the day.
Thank you, James, and welcome to all of our viewers. This is the 14th lesson in our study of Matthew. Yesterday, we studied Matthew chapter 4, verses 18 to 25, discussing the calling of Jesus' disciples, Peter, Andrew, James, and John. If you missed that episode, you can find it and all of our other podcasts on multiple platforms by going to one of the different sites listed on the bottom of the screen. Today, we're going to begin with Matthew chapter 5, verse 1 and read through verse 12. The text that you'll see on the screen is from the New King James Version, but you're welcome to follow along with any version that you have. So let's now read Matthew chapter 5, beginning at verse 1. And seeing the multitudes, he went up upon a mountain, and when he was seated, his disciples came to him. Then he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they revile and persecute you, and say all kinds of evil against you falsely, for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. In the last chapter, we had Jesus preaching, teaching, and performing miracles, and developing quite a following. Now in today's reading, we have Jesus seeing the crowds and deciding to take them up to a mountain where it would be more convenient for him to preach to such a great number of people. The sermon that Matthew records for us in actuality takes up the entirety of Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7, which will take us 21 episodes to cover. Even though we will not read this sermon in one sitting, I invite all viewing to take some time and sit down and read it all at once. If you do that, you'll see how it all comes together and will produce the response that the multitude had in Matthew 7, verses 28 and 29. Jesus begins his sermon with what we call the Beatitudes. The word beatitude means supreme blessedness or exalted happiness. That's why some versions will use the phrase blessed is, and some will use the phrase happy are. Now, as we read through these Beatitudes, we will come away with an understanding that Jesus isn't talking about 9 different people here, but one person, an example of a follower of God. Due to the fact that this podcast is 5 minutes long, we would be doing the beginning of this sermon an injustice by trying to cover all the Beatitudes in this lesson. So what we will do is reread this section each time over the next 5 episodes so that we don't lose the context, but we will be covering generally 2 Beatitudes in each lesson. Jesus' first Beatitude is, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. What does Jesus mean here? Someone who is poor in spirit is not talking about someone who is physically poor, but someone who is not self-satisfied, someone who wants to know God, and someone who can take instruction. We would call such a person humble. In Proverbs 16, 18, and 19, we read, Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Better to be of a humble spirit with the lowly than to divide the spoil with the proud. What will the poor in spirit's reward be? The kingdom of heaven. In James 4, verses 6 and 10, we read, But he gives more grace. Therefore he says, God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Skipping to verse 10, Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up. Those who are poor in spirit will be the ones who are members of Christ's church and will be going to heaven. The second beatitude is, Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. This statement might seem paradoxical, for why should people be happy when they mourn? I guess the answer becomes obvious when we understand what they're mourning over. Often we think of mourning over a loved one, but in context, that's not what's being talked about here. The mourning under consideration is one who mourns over sin. I think of David's mourning over his sin with Bathsheba and murder of Uriah found in Psalms 51, 1-4. Those who truly mourn over their sin do not want to fall into it, but when they do, will repent and ask God for forgiveness. God will comfort and forgive those who mourn over their sin and return to him. In Matthew 11:28-30, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Let's always be mournful over sin and desire not to live any longer in it. With that, our time is up for today. Please join us, Lord willing, tomorrow when we will continue our study of Matthew, beginning with Matthew 5, verse 5.
Thank you, Jeremy. And to our viewers, we also thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button below. Should you have a question or comment, please leave it below or email it to answerintheword@gmail.com. We'll try to respond to you as quickly as we can. We hope you'll join us, Lord's willing, tomorrow when we will be continuing on our study in the book of Matthew. Goodbye for now and have a great day.
I'm not ashamed to own my Lord, nor